Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready to dive in, especially when it comes to language learning.
Me too. I mean, who doesn't love the idea of unlocking a whole new world of communication, right?
Right. It's pretty amazing what our brains can do.
And that's actually what we're going to be exploring today. We're going to be looking at some research, some habits of people who are really good at learning languages. And, hopefully by the end of this, you'll walk away with a few ideas that you can try out yourself. Maybe even like a secret weapon or two.
I love that, a secret weapon. I think a lot of people assume there's some magical formula for language learning, but really,
It's more about mindset and habits.
exactly. It's the small, consistent things you do that really add up over time.
Okay, so let's jump right in. One of the first things that really stood out to me in this research is the importance of not being afraid to make mistakes. I know, it sounds so cliche, but
But it's true, and there's actually some really cool neuroscience behind it. Every time we make a mistake and then we correct it, our brain is basically strengthening the connections related to that language.
so like those neural pathways are getting a workout.
Exactly. It's like building a muscle memory, but for language.
I never thought about it like that. So it's not just about like being okay with making mistakes, it's about actually like using those mistakes to kind of like level up almost.
Yeah, absolutely. Mistakes are literally how we learn. Think about little kids learning to talk. They make a ton of mistakes, but they're not afraid to try, and they just keep getting better.
That's so true. They're not like self-conscious about their accent or whatever.
Exactly. They're just focused on communicating.
Okay, that's a good reminder for all of us. So we've talked about the brain's ability to learn from mistakes, but what about the social side of language? I mean, our research also really emphasizes the importance of interacting with other people, having real conversations. Is it really that crucial? Can't I just learn a lot from books and apps and stuff?
Well, books and apps are amazing tools, absolutely, but they can only take you so far. Think of it like this. You can read all about basketball in a book, learn the rules, study the strategies, even watch videos of the pros.
But until you actually get on the court and play,
Exactly. You're not going to develop those skills in the same way.
right? So it's about actually using the language in real time, in real situations with real people.
Yeah. Real-world communication pushes us in ways that solo learning just can't replicate. You have to think on your feet, adapt to different accents and speaking styles, and just deal with all the unpredictable stuff that happens in a real conversation.
Which can be scary. I'll admit, I get nervous sometimes.
Of course, it's totally normal to feel nervous, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And those uncomfortable moments are actually the moments where you learn the most.
Okay, I'm going to try to remember that next time I'm feeling tongue-tied. So we've talked about embracing mistakes, getting social. What else? Oh, note-taking. This one comes up in the research a lot too. And I got to be honest, sometimes I feel a little lazy about taking notes, especially, when I'm just watching a video or something. Is it really that big of a deal?
It might seem a little old school in our digital age, but note-taking is seriously powerful. And again, there's a lot of science to back it up. When we write things down, we're actually engaging in what's called active learning. It's not just passively listening or reading, it's actually processing the information.
Oh, okay. So it's like the act of physically writing it down forces our brain to pay attention and kind of, absorb it more deeply.
Exactly. It's like you're not just letting the information wash over you, you're actually grabbing onto it, making it your own.
That makes sense. And I guess there are different ways to take notes too, right? Like it doesn't have to be just like boring linear sentences.
Absolutely. Experiment and find what works for you. If you're a visual learner, try mind maps or diagrams. Some people like to use colors or highlighters. The key is to find a way to make it engaging and meaningful for you.
Okay, so good note-taking, check. Next up, dictionaries. The research really emphasizes the importance of using dictionaries regularly and building those vocabulary lists. But isn't there more to it than just memorizing words?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's not just about rote memorization. It's about understanding the nuances of words, synonyms, antonyms, all the different shades of meaning. It's about seeing how words fit into broader concepts and relate to each other.
So it's about building a kind of web of meaning, not just isolated words.
Exactly. When you encounter a new word, don't just look it up and move on. Spend some time with it. Create example sentences, draw pictures, try to connect it to other words you already know. Make it come alive for you.
I love that. Make it come alive. Okay, so next up is a habit that kind of challenges us to think outside the textbook, literally. The research suggests trying to think in the target language, even outside of class. I gotta admit, I struggle with this one.
It's definitely a challenge, but even if you can't travel to a country where the language is spoken, you can create those immersive experiences right where you are.
Oh, that's interesting. How do you do that?
Well, think about it. How much time do you spend on your phone every day?
Probably too much.
Well, there you go. Change your phone's language settings to your target language. It'll force you to navigate menus and apps in that language. Listen to music and podcasts, find YouTube channels in that language.
Oh, yeah. I actually did that with music for a while, and it really helped me pick up new words and phrases without even trying.
Right. And it's not just about the input, it's about the output too. Try talking to yourself in the language, even if it's just for a few minutes each day. Describe what you're doing, think about your plans for the day, anything.
So it's about creating those little mini language bubbles throughout your day, even if you're not physically in a place where the language is spoken.
Exactly. And even just 5 minutes a day can make a difference.
5 minutes, I could do that. Challenge accepted. And speaking of making language learning enjoyable, the research also talks about finding ways to engage with language through media, books, movies, things that actually interest you.
That's so important. Motivation is key. And when you're genuinely enjoying what you're learning, it just doesn't feel like work anymore.
Totally. It's like if you hate romantic comedies, don't force yourself to watch them in your target language. You're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to learn as effectively. Find something you're actually passionate about.
Exactly. Let that passion fuel your language journey.
Okay, I'm writing that down. Find your passion. Last but not least, there's one more habit that really stood out to me in the research, and it honestly surprised me a little bit. They found that really good language learners often visualize themselves speaking the language fluently. Is that really that powerful? Visualization.
It might sound a bit wooey, I know, but there's actually a lot of research that shows that visualization can be incredibly powerful, not just for language learning, but for pretty much any skill you're trying to master.
I've heard of athletes using visualization to improve their performance. But how does it work with languages?
Well, when we vividly imagine ourselves doing something successfully, our brain actually starts to fire those same neural pathways as if we were actually doing it. So in a way, we're kind of tricking our brain into believing that we're already fluent.
So it's like a mental rehearsal.
Exactly. And the more we rehearse those successful scenarios in our mind, the more confident we become and the more likely we are to actually succeed in real life.
That is so cool. Okay, so imagine yourself speaking fluently. Got it. So I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
Just to reiterate, I think the biggest takeaway here is that the most successful language learners are active learners. They're not afraid to make mistakes, they seek out opportunities to use the language, and they find ways to make the process enjoyable.
They're curious, persistent, and they don't give up.
Exactly. And that's something anyone can cultivate, regardless of your age, background, or, how many languages you've already learned.
So true. So for everyone listening, what one thing from this deep dive will you try this week to level up your language learning? We'd love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments or, send us a message. And until next time, happy learning.
Happy learning, Toe 81.